Hello, Jesse.
Morning.
Morning. Okay, so yeah. Well, I guess we're going to have our meeting here. I don't know if I had invited Jayadratha to give a presentation today, so he might show up. Otherwise, I don't know if Jesse wanted to get started or maybe he has some updates for us.
I published the post on the MIT AI Ventures write-up finally, and I always use it as a practice for a lot of the media things I'm trying to do. Like I recorded myself going through the key points, I went through the whole whiteboard and everything like that. I'll probably just put that in. I think we talked about it sufficiently that I don't really need to say a lot more. But just to kind of show it, yeah, I'll do that. I'll show it briefly here. Yeah, it's here. Ooh, let's not go into that yet. But there's sort of, that's me, big nerdy guy right here. I happen to be in the middle of the shot at the end, which is kind of fun for the judges. But it was it was a really good time, and it was good to break this down, and I continue to just be, let me get this, continue to just be learning so much from the whole experience. So it's nice to do that. I've put you in there, Bradley. You could not be involved if you want, because I realized a lot of the audio that I was trying to use originally basically got cut out, and a lot of our interactions didn't make it. But I thought, like, well, you were essentially part of the conversation or part of the discussion, so I put you there. But yeah, it's something I'm going to keep referring to, and that's why I kind of I put the work in to make it an artifact, because not only are the nice pictures, and John Warner did he takes all these great pictures, which is awesome, but there's a lot of lessons here, and nice to remember I start with the background and then mention things that we've been talking about, but going through, essentially this is a modified transcript below, and I just continue to go through the lessons of the day, and some of them were about leading and mentoring, and what it's like to prepare people to do this kind of an event. And as I've said before, it was basically the John Warner masterclass, because he's done a lot of things like this, and it was great to see him sort of conduct the event. A lot of know who's in the room, a lot of how do you convey value and time and all those sorts of things. But understanding people's time and having things organized and flowing in a way that conveys both people's time matters, the VIP time matters, the audience matters, the judges matters, and essentially modeling as a leader or a MC, and to the team itself that their time matters. All these implicit ways to do that. And then, key things on actually, centering discussion, what worked well for pitching or not. And essentially one of my biggest takeaways from that is the pitching itself, of making it explicit. Like, you've got to really figure out how to convey the value and the effort that you're doing, and make it digestible and demonstrable. And if you can clearly convey the work somehow, it can be a finished app, or an app that has a function that works really well, or some other way to illustrate what it is, depending on the context of who you're pitching to, that really matters. And then, saying your main points and then getting out of the way. I find, especially for pitching, and I was actually talking to someone else this week about they had a sort of presentation. I forget what it was for. It was essentially, it was someone else, I think it was an academic context. It might have been a course or some conference. They were basically dealing with a 5 to 7 minute presentation, and we kind of come across the same points there. I mean, it's so much about saying key points and not diluting them, and then getting out of the way, because you don't need to dilute them, and a lot of it is just having something very clear to look at in an attention sense, and then not diluting the attention. And realizing you can have follow-ups, you can have appendices, you can do this other stuff later. You can dovetail it, but you want the clarity of what you're trying to communicate to come across. And I think it was very interesting. I think I mentioned demo or die here somewhere specifically, but it was sort of at the high end level of demo or die stuff. It was a nice example of what do you do in that sense. This was actually somewhat, even though there's a lot of people there, it was a kind of a low stakes in-house environment, which is maybe different when you are MIT and, it's an event where people are just going to show up because you're in a gigantic ecosystem of innovation, and people are going to always try to scoop what the latest MIT companies are going to be. So it wasn't totally, a walk in the park in-house, no stakes environment. But it was a nice mix. It was a really interesting mix in that way, because you would see the mentoring as well as the opportunities and the real questions and the real stakes that were at hand, and people getting really excited. Oh, I can't wait until the cool off period, and I can invest in this or be a part of this or work with this team. So yeah, I had a few interactions with the first place team. I also rated them very highly. It was Sarrah and Coca and her group, which at least here is Human Truths, and I think it's out now, so you can talk about it more. But basically, they did a lot of the things that I pointed out very well. They had their message. They had very, very clear communication. They demonstrated. They got out of the way. They were professional, and it was very easy to see they were doing something both impactful, which is sort of the name of the game for this course and this event, and then also they had something actually in development. And so I kind of keep going back to this timeline to say, always keep in mind the timeline, because if you start further along it, then the distance between going from here to here and here to here might not be very apparent. But if you've put in a month, 2 months, 3 months, it's a lot easier to go from here to here than from here to here and then to here. So I keep finding, I'm kind of glad I made this chart, because it's so fun to reference in that context of, if you're just starting out, it's probably not going to feel like this at all. But if you move this up and then you do this linear expectation timeline, it kind of fits it a bit better. So it really depends on where you start, and it's why so much really good advice is about start now, fail fast, if you will, but get the iterations out, and that can be for presenting in-house your work, writing the simple blog. I'm doing a lot of iterating with my social media context and my making content, which is kind of weird for me to say still, but I'm learning and doing the awkward process of being bad at it, and then continuing to get better at it, so that it actually looks like I'm getting better at it, and there's actually visible progress to other people too. But to kind of wrap up, there's me at one of the judges things, and that was actually a nice picture. The crew does a good job of actually giving you nice pictures sometimes, and that's always fun. And there's the whiteboard. So yeah, it's always fun to talk about that. I'm sure I'll be referencing this for a very long time, just because of the implicit takeaways and what it means for different levels of, being at the higher end of the demo or die. You got to present your stuff. You're talking to the founders now, and how you get there. Because I think there were a lot of implicit training in how you get there through everything else. There's a few more things in the post about jobs and where things are going and everything else, but that's pretty much what it is. So I'm happy to kind of have it released in the public finally, and if you want to hear me ramble about it even more, there's me just walking through the transcript basically for 35 minutes, but now it's sort of done, and it's great to just sort of be done with it. Like, I'm not going to have to deal with it anymore, and there's enough there, and I can come back to reference it, and I can point it and excerpt it and link to it, and it will come up and be sort of essentially proto-teachable materials. I'm eventually making some curriculums and some trainings around these kind of things, some of which will be shared here in time, and we'll cover in some of the courses some of the meetings ahead will basically be intentional. Okay, we're going to talk about, how do you talk to your supervisor today, or these fundamentals of open source, and basically having a career, or having, especially from my angle, having how do you build stuff? How do you work on a team with people to make new things? That's a major focus on what I want to help facilitate in my lifetime from here on out. And I've been fortunate to have been a part of a lot of really cool spaces doing that. And I think there's a lot there. So, but it's also a specific kind of, it's a specific skill set and familiarity. And I think there's a lot to do. And all of we've had so many years of good discussion around that I'm looking forward to doing more of that ahead. But we are making some specific, curriculums and trainings for that to come, and I'm looking forward to that too. So that's my share for that stuff. And any immediate questions about that before other things? I don't have a whole lot more to say. There's small things, but nothing substantial, I guess. Any comments or questions, Bradley? Oops.
I think you did a good job of going over that, and I'm glad that you talked about demo or die. Because I do have some slides on demo or die I'm going to try to present today. So
and
yeah,
I can wait until that time to say a bit more. But one of the things I didn't say was I'll come on camera for a second. One of the things I didn't say in all this was basically, I think we have, I don't think I ever submitted it to Medium or anything else like that, but some time ago, we also talked about like going beyond demo or die. And I don't know if you're going to cover what that entailed at the time. So I don't want to like interrupt the flow of discussing that per se, but what I really, sorry, okay, I think I could say this here. Yeah, like what we mean by going beyond demo or die, or what I meant originally by beyond demo or die, was demo or die is sort of like the high stakes value of things, but you also have to kind of create a community where you can fail internally nicely to build up. Like if you just throw somebody with no training into like, a football game with professionals, like it could be bad, or at least it could be awkward. And some people can do great, but like you gotta have to like, how do you scaffold and build up the in-betweens, or make the culture internally that you can feel good about failing and feel good about growing. So I don't know if that's at all what you wanted to talk about, but I might follow up on that when you get to the demo or die stuff too, because that's something that's been in the lab for a long time.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, well, thank you again. As a Vidhi, I don't know if you had something you wanted to share, or?
Right, so as I mentioned last week, I just have a very small presentation on what I'm going to do in the next week. I'll present it. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Right. So in my proposal, I had put this whole table where I put a timeline. So in my proposal, I mentioned that in week 1 and 2, I'm going to implement the baseline simulation setup, and I'll define the environment, initialize the agents, implement the basic task assignment logic. So all this was for week 1 and 2. So my objectives for week 1 are that I'm going to set up the GitHub-like simulation environment, define the agent roles, and in my case, I have 4 agents, and implement the basic task assignment rules. So I've just put a small snippet of how the rule-based logic will be, that if the task is a bug fix, then the agent, the contributor agent, will be assigned to it, depending on its expertise. And if the assignment, if the task load is more than 3, then we will skip so that we can avoid the overload. And so these are the 4 agents which I mentioned last week as well, that the maintainer will review the PRs, contributor will fix the bugs, innovator will propose the features and knowledge curator will have all the documents. So again, this is just a small flowchart on how the task assignment will be. That if it's a bug, it's going to be assigned to the contributor. If not, if it's a feature, then innovator. Otherwise, either the knowledge curator or the contributor. And yeah, this is the file structure. Currently on GitHub, we just have the Sustain Hub folder. And this is what I'm aiming to have in the next week. Yeah, and then after that, week 2, probably I can work on the task allocation using the multi-arm bandit and track the agent performance metrics.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you for presenting that. That looks good. So we'll start, this coding period starts in a few days, actually. I think
this weekend, right?
Sunday.
2nd June.
Yeah, Monday. It looks like you've kind of thought out how you want to implement things, what you're going to be doing for weeks 1 and 2. So, I look forward to seeing that.
Yep. And then next week I can tell you about what I did, like what I'll do next week, and then what I'll be doing in the further week. Also, I was thinking that like for documentation purpose, I wanted to maintain weekly blogs. So where can I do that?
Okay, yeah. So we can do that. You can host a Medium site, or you can do that on your own GitHub IO. So you're familiar with GitHub IO?
Like the GitHub pages, right? And I'm not very familiar, but I'm aware of what it is, yeah.
Yeah, so, that's where people have hosted them in the past. We also have, like, our own lab medium. But that lab medium, I want to reserve that for, like, special posts. So if you want to do, like, an update, a week-by-week update, I would do that, like, on the GitHub pages. And if you want to do, like, special posts, like if you want to summarize your project at the halfway point, then we can do a push to the lab medium, and we'll talk about how to do that when the time comes.
Yeah, and
So
go ahead, Sarah. Yeah.
okay, I was just about to say, you can have a look at like the Medium pages I published during my GSoC. So what I used to do is I used to publish on my GitHub IO first, as Bradley said, and then if there were any like special ones, I used to get them reposted on the Medium page. So you can just like, when you go to the Medium page, you can scroll down, you can see it, the original post was on my GitHub IO and it was reposted here. So you can also do something similar as far as Bradley suggested. Yeah, go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, basically reiterating that, and also like just to make this sort of explicit for anyone here, like if people aren't sure about, I'm sure everybody's technically able of sorting out how to do a blog or a GitHub thing, but if you ever want to talk about the part of writing, or if you want to discuss, okay, I want to write this and maybe I want to make a LinkedIn update about it, or I want to have it elsewhere or whatever, you can talk to us about that too. That's something that I'm focusing on lately and doing work in terms of how do you communicate this stuff to folks. But I think functionally, administratively, yes, if you have sort of an aggregate or a maybe a couple of weeks, or it doesn't have to just be the midterm and the final, but if you have an aggregate post that would suit the medium for orthogonal lab, absolutely do it there. And if you want to do intentional documentation or like quote unquote microblogging or just shorter updates somewhere, that's a really good thing to do for you specifically, and kind of differentiating the kind of writing that helps you keep track of where you're going. Like I would definitely keep track of almost like a dev blog for yourself. And if you want to make that public and open source, that'd be a great thing to have for, yes, the GitHub IO, yes, your own like sort of personal blog that's much, much smaller. But if you want to have a bigger update that's a little more comprehensive and tells a bit more of a story, and then we publish that to Medium, or make that into a really nice LinkedIn post or something that you want to show off, that's something we're here to help you with too.
Alright, thank you. So I think I'll continue with the GitHub Hio pages first, and then for the main posts, either Medium or something. Right. Yeah. Thank you.
The first thing I wanted to share was about our lab medium. So this is our lab medium, medium.com ORL-group, and this is where we have all of our posts that we have from different people in the lab. Jesse's posted some things. I posted some things. Pocky, who was a GSoC student last year, it's not bringing up Sarrah's post, but Sarrah posted a number of very excellent posts last summer on her GSoC project, kind of walking through every couple weeks different things that were going on in the project. And so I think, yeah, blogging is a good kind of, practice for summarizing what you're doing. And in fact, when we talk about demo or die, these are the kinds of demos that, that are really, I think, helpful. Having like walking through a problem or walking maybe through some of the problems you're having. It doesn't even need to be that you've solved anything. It just needs to be that you can articulate what the problem you're having is. And then other people can help you resolve those problems, or in walking through the problems that you're having, you can figure them out yourself. You can't really say, you can say you have a problem, but you can't really solve it until you articulate it. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. The other thing I wanted to point out was that I'm assigning people to different GitHub repositories. So this is the repository we'll be using for Vidhi's project. So I have the ORL group GitHub open, and this is the GSoC repository. And I wanted to have things posted here on Sustain Hub. So I've created a directory 2025 Sustain Hub. This will be where we can work on common files. I don't know, Vidhi, maybe you could post them here. I've already sent out invites to people in the GSoC students, and please accept those invites. They should be in your inbox, and then if you do that, you'll have administrative access to this GitHub repository. You can then commit things here, and we can review them as need be. Because at the end of GSoC, we're going to have, you're going to have a permanent home for your materials. And so it'd be nice to have that place be in the organization. Okay. Then I also have one for Jayadratha and Lalith. This is the DevoGraph repository. You're probably familiar with this. This is where, again, if you're working in Hyper DevoGraph, which is with Lalith and Jayadratha, I would like you to contribute to this repository here. So this is the Hyper DevoGraph repository on the DevoGraph. Actually, I guess it's a directory, Hyper DevoGraph, but DevoGraph repository. And just so that we have a place, again, where we can put our files and we know where they are. We don't want to work on files locally and then lose files. We also want to have something in the organization. So this actually is a little bit different because this directory, this was developed by Mahul last year, I think, where it was, I think Mahul was the person to start this directory and kind of going through some documentation. So, you don't have to add to the documentation right away. You can maybe create your own files in here and then contribute to the README appropriately. So the idea will be that we'll have this repository we can go to, review things, make sure things are all sort of in a place where we can commonly access them. Okay, so I think
Yes, sure, definitely. I'll like all the updates. I'll put it there.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. yeah, I would try to work from that place.
Yes, actually, I mean, for my project, since it is a temporal graph thing, so like I was checking that what Paki has done last year, that is the this one, the growing GNN. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, it is more relevant for my work. So
Okay.
if like I can push my codes there, maybe that will be better for me.
Okay. Yeah, that might be better. And growing GNN is just another directory in that repository. So yeah, if you think that's better, then please do that. But just make sure that we know kind of where things are, and just make sure you let us know kind of where to look for that.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I was running that code, and I found there is a data set that Paki have like he or I mean that has been already created, and that data set I can use for my work as well. Like for one part of my work, and for other part of work, we'll explore. I mean, for connectome data, we'll explore how to get the data and work on like temporal graph thing.
Okay. Yeah, last year we did some calibrating with data sets, so we trained the model with data sets, and I think Pocky got up to a certain sized embryo and then ran out of memory or something like that. So again, we're going to have limitations like that. But if you want to use, we have in DevoGraph, of course, different data sets. We can look into how to use those more effectively, maybe.
Okay, okay, okay. So, like initially, I plan to start with that data. So, okay, if I can share my screen.
Okay. So yeah, as Jayadratha is getting ready, I wanted to point out that Ronit was wanting to introduce himself. This is Ronit Raj. Earlier, I have joined a few meetings and missed a few too. Though I couldn't make it to GSoC, I could really like this DevoGraph project. This is the one we're talking about right now. I have learned about GNNs from this and other, and really want to contribute into DevoGraph. Can you please suggest something I can do? Yeah, let's talk about that. Maybe we have of course, our DevoWorm project on Mondays at 10 o'clock Eastern time in the U.S. If you want to join that group, we certainly will be talking more in depth about um, graph neural networks and that sort of thing. So that's an option. And otherwise, you can contact me offline in Slack, and we can discuss, maybe a project. But of course, Jayadratha is working on a project, and then Lalith is working on a project. And we have, of course, the DevoGraph repository, which I just showed. So there's stuff in the DevoGraph repository as well. So welcome, Rona, and yes, I welcome you to work on things, but we can talk about how that will contribute to the organization. And then, of course, I want you to have your own, get your own benefit out of it as well. So thank you for attending. Yeah.
Hi. Okay. Jaya, continuing or?
Who was that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Yeah. Okay, so what Paki has done last year, I mean, there is a data set that has been built. There is a CSV data. This is open here. So, like, there are parent cells and what are the position in 3D, those XYZ coordinates, and at different bath time, what are the like daughters that come from these parent cells. And if you can see in these timestamp, there can be more than one like new daughters that came, and here also like in 105, uh, there are like multiple new cells that has been born. So we can create a temporal data sets out of these things. So we'll use these 0, 17, 18, these are timestamp, and in each timestamp we'll create a graph, and this graph is growing, and then we'll try to predict after some time, like what are the new uh, uh, like I mean how the graph evolve after some time. That is what I want to do, and if I share my proposal here, I have written exactly that. But here I have written like two different kind of data set I want to build. One is cell lineage and another is connectome. So in cell lineage that is already there. Based on the mark time and cell identities, how the cell division is happening, that I want to see. And for connectome data, I have to see what are the data sets that are available publicly, or if we can build something on this connectome data. So, yeah, uh, and based upon those data, like this discrete and temporal graph that has like each timestamp, what are the new edges or nodes that are coming, we'll build a graph, and then we'll use primarily evolve GSoC. That is a very like popular model that are used in data framework, and I mean that is what I want to do here, and like in coding period, I have written how we proceed. Now, primarily I am using Google Colab, and I mean, in week 1 and 2, I want to like conduct those literature reviews, and then I want to finalize the data sources. I already have one data sources that is there, like Paki build, and the other data sources I want to check, and then like data processing pipeline and to build after that in the next 2 weeks, and then like how can I segment those data into discrete time intervals, those you have to check, and then like we'll build some discrete time temporal graphs. I was trying to do, but now if I can show you after some time, I'll show you that. But now the problem is we have only 121 timestamps. But in my like code, I was getting 1200. I mean total number of data that is available. But I'll fix that, and then we'll add up this evolve GCN on those data, and then we'll train on the uh, I mean on that data. That is like for the first half I want to do, and if I can show you this one, this is primarily I was using Google Colab currently, and later I mean I'll go back to my current I mean my own computer. But the thing is, here we can use like GPUs if that is needed. Since this data that is available, this data is not that big. We can work in a in CPU system and in my own system only. But if the data grows, then we will like we can come back to some places where GPU access we can get. So I was running the data itself. I mean, running the code by Paki, and then here I have started the development. So this is what they got, and how with time it is changing. Now I tried to get the temporal data, and we got like timestamp and what is the coordinates and age index. I mean, based on the new BART sale of BART for new sales, we got the age index and the Y. But I have to fix this one. So, to consolidate for next few weeks, what I have to do is I'll do some literature review on connectome on these two datasets. How we can build these two datasets, connectome datasets and cell lineage datasets, and then we create a DTVG kind of datasets.
Yeah, that looks great. So these are cell lineage and connectome. So you're thinking of combining them in different ways, or so for development, cell lineage intersects with the connectome at a certain point. So you don't. You have I guess you could call like your embryo network a connectome. So anytime you have a bunch of cells, those are connected. But then you have the neural connectome, which emerges around 200 minutes. And then that's just where the cell lineage reaches a certain point where cells differentiate into neurons. And so those neurons then start to form a connectome where they connect, and they form this nervous system that is eventually something that gets turned on in terms of external behavior. So it's interesting. Yeah, we've talked about this in the group. We've written some papers on it, and it's a really interesting problem. And again, it's you have to have like this method that really kind of incorporates all of it. So I like this vision of kind of thinking about things over time, and that's I guess that's where Pocky was going last summer. She had you showed a graph where you plot these cells in 3D space. So the lineage tree is where cells divide in a binary fashion, and you get more and more cells in a volume, and then you can plot this out in 3D and see kind of their distribution. There isn't much to say about the distribution early on, except that you get basic anterior posterior polarity. You get you can propose connections between the cells largely based on distance. You can see that graph, and then you start to emerge some structure later as sort of their structure and the phenotype, and then of course you get the connectome that is it's sort of a new class of cell, although you do also get other things that are differentiating as well. So this is going to I'm interested to see what you can visualize out of these data sets.
Okay, sure. Yeah, what I thought about this is Paki did what she did was visualizing the graph and growth over time. I want to show it's like a temporal fashion how these things is happening. How from single cell there are 2 or 3 new cells are coming. In terms of visualization, and then I want to show through temporal graph neural networks. So suppose I have 300 or 300 number of timestamp, and on those timestamp there are new cells that is generating, and suppose I have at first 200 graph that is available. At 200 at first 200 timestamp, what are the cell divisions, and based on the birth time that happens, and then can we predict what will happen in 201 timestamp. That is also I want to do in terms of cell lineage, and for connectome in terms of synaptic connection, or how brain is developing, or new nervous system that is developing. That is what I was thinking. I mean, in twofold.
Yeah, I mean, in C. elegans, that's easy because everything is deterministic. So we know kind of when things emerge. And they usually do across different organisms. But I mean, visualizing that, though, is a different story. Like having a snapshot at 220 minutes and then moving to 340 minutes and then superimposing those and understanding that's where I think you really have some really good potential is to have like these, snapshots and maybe, model alternate scenarios of temporal progression and things like that. But that's not like immediate concern. That's just kind of like what we might do in the future. But yeah, I like where you're starting from. Yeah, I like that you have this nice collab notebook ready. So the literature review. So what are your plans for that? So you said you were going to do in week 1 the literature review. Is this mainly looking for data sets, or is this for like just to frame the problem?
Yeah, mostly like how can I build the data sets for both like Connectome as well as the new Bastawala. So I mean that is already available, but of new sales that has been done by Party, but about Connectome modeling for that data, if I can get from somewhere.
Okay.
And also I want to like review few temporal graph models other than evolution that has I mean that come recently. If they have some advantages or they are performing better than evolutions.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. Anyone else have any questions? Sarrah, did you have a question?
Yeah, not a question for this. Like I was just trying to speak in general, but yeah, I'll finish for this. I'll wait for this to finish.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So that's good. Yeah. Thank you, Jayadratha.
Okay, thank you. So next week I'll show both of them. I mean, I'll try to search to different dynamic graph models, and I'll present whatever I found, and then I'll also show if there is any data sets or some kind of data that is available on Connectome modeling, and that will I'll also present. And I already started like I mean, developing temporal graph data sets on I mean cell division that have some bugs. I'll fix that and I'll show in the next meeting. Maybe.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Sarrah.
Yeah, so hi in general. I missed both the meets last week. I got my wisdom tooth extracted, so I was in no position to join. So just catching up this week. Heard everybody's updates were really nice, especially Vidhi and Jaya's. Also welcome Ronit. Another thing that I actually wanted to talk about and really liked was the way that Jaya mentioned that he's trying to look back at the past codes, what has been done in the past, how it relates to what he's trying to do. And he also mentioned that he'll be in the starting period, he'll be looking at some literature review. So, like, it kind of relates exactly to what I had done and how I would also like give my 2 cents of advice to all the GSoC students this year to since the coding period is starting very shortly, not directly just jump into starting to code, but taking a step back, trying to look at the bigger picture, trying to look at how what you're doing fits. So because like by now all the plans have been finalized about what you're going to do, but also trying to look at how it fits, how it relates to what has been done previously, making sure you're not, kind of repeating the same stuff that has been done previously. And also looking at some literature to see, like, since the last time this project was done, have there been any new developments? Have there been any new approaches that you can take? And also, like, in the blogs or fashion, like, a weekly blog is definitely good, but also one blog in the start that kind of summarizes your plan and your approach, and all of this literature review would also be like a really great start, like something I would recommend. Because when you're going, like when you're starting your coding period, you can always look back at this and see what you've accomplished, what you've completed, what you've done. So yeah, just like 2 cents of advice. Kind of try to summarize what you've done so far and what you're planning to do. And also look at the past code, definitely look at the literature, look at everything, and kind of try to document that as well. So yeah, that's it.
That's good. Thank you. That's great advice. And yeah, so I mean, getting a handle on where you are and definitely will save you from having to rescope your project later, I think. And it's always true. I think when you're working through your problem, sometimes people get so focused on trying to do what they think they need to do that they lose track of where they are, and then they have to rescope their project because they've gone down the wrong path, or that they're just trying to do too many things at once. And sometimes you get to a point where it's not worth doing certain things, or maybe pushing those other things, prioritizing some things and pushing the less essential things into the future. And then maybe that doesn't get done, but you've gotten the essential things you need to do completed. So we'll talk about a lot of these strategies throughout the throughout the summer. All right, now I'd like to finish up today talking about a few things. First of all, the coding period begins June 1, as I mentioned. This is Sunday, so be aware of that. You start coding. That just means that you have to start hewing to your schedule, because we have a very finite amount of time to do our project. And again, you don't need to stick to that schedule completely. Sometimes you want to reevaluate where you are. Sometimes you'll want to change your schedule and adjust it based on if you've hit some dead ends, or if you have a better idea of how to do something, or simply if something is taking too long to implement. Those are all things that can happen. So good luck in the coding period, the start of the coding period, and next week we'll get a report on where people are. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I have some slides on demo or die. So this is following up on what Jesse was talking about. So and I'll talk a little bit about demo or die, and this is just one set of views on it. Certainly Jesse had some interesting things to say about how to apply demo or die, maybe to like a pitch, like a startup pitch, where you're trying to show people how something works, you're trying to get their attention and ultimately their funding. And so that's, a place where the demo has to be very polished, and you have to be very polished in what you say, very intentional. But demo or dies, the way it kind of works in project management is often much less formal. And so this is a type of practice that is pretty diverse, actually. In one case, this is an article by Dana Boyd, and it says, "How Demo or Die Helped My Career." And this is an article that talks about how you can use demoing or creating demos to sort of engage people, how to teach them things, or sometimes how to demonstrate, both to other people and yourself how something works. So if you can't, there's a adage that something like, if you can't explain how something works, you don't understand how something works. If you can't walk through that thing and show how something works, then you don't really understand it. And I think that's true of demo or die more generally. It's either you can demo something or it's, not, it's, you die and you have to go learn more. So this is, and again, it's like demo just simply means walking through something, just making sure you can show someone how, maybe in a limited functional fashion how something works. Here's, if I want to show you how our meetings work, I could walk through how we usually structure a meeting, the tools we use to record the meeting, to record notes, to project onto the screen, all those things. And that's a demo, and then we can talk about that. It's It's also important to remember that demos are the first phase of the innovation cycle. So this is where, we're trying to say, um, you know, get a new idea off the ground. And so if we want to innovate, if we want to create something new, oftentimes we'll want to demo it to show that it's possible. So we have these proof of concepts, which are demos, and we say, okay, um, if I create something new, people are going to tend to not believe me. So how can I show them that this works, or at least in practice? So this is where you want to create a demo that's a proof of concept that says this thing is viable, this thing is possible, and then we'll work out the details later. So it's not necessarily like putting something into production, it's just showing that something can work. So demos are also practice. And in fact, that's the most important part of this whole process is practice. In medical education, they use the phrase see one, do one, teach one, which means you observe something in the world. In this case, maybe you observe an idea in your brain, you put it into practice, and then you teach other people how to do it. So you might say, have an idea, you observe that idea, you think about it, you implement it in some way, and then you teach other people how it works. You do a demo. And so demos can be, very informal. They can be structured very informally. We just did some demos in the meeting. So, one example of a demo is the act of running through quasi-functioning code for diverse audiences. So when you walk through quasi-functioning code for yourself, you might know what a lot of things do. So you don't have to explain them. You just kind of say, yes, yes, yes. It's like a checklist. But when you're talking to people, especially diverse audiences, maybe people who don't have a background in coding, or people who don't understand your problem, or other people who don't know anything about what's going on, you want to be able to make it accessible to them. So that's requires sometimes some unique ways of sort of showing your work. And so this requires a lot of improvisational skills on your part. You need to develop these improvisational skills so that you can take the process that you have and show it in different ways to people, to different audiences. And if they have questions, then you can answer them. And sometimes their questions will not match the way that you have it scripted. So you have to sort of go in a different direction. So, during a demo, you're often showing people this thing and people are impressed, but they have questions. And those questions are good because that means that they're engaging with you. But sometimes the questions kind of drive the demo. In other words, my understanding is based on me seeing you do this thing, but also my own questions. So I say, okay, what about this? And okay, here's something, here's how this works. Because remember, when my goal, just if I were to do this for myself, is to get through a demo in the quickest possible manner. But other people don't necessarily understand it that way because maybe you need to back up and introduce concepts. Maybe you need to show how some feature works for what they want to do. And so those are all things that can spur on conversations, can really give it a good give it a nice sort of interactive flavor. So, but this has mutual benefits. So you as the demoer, you gain familiarity with each demo you give. You give a demo, you give 2 demos, you give 3 demos, and each time you get better at giving that demo. But you also gain familiarity with the process, so you know kind of backwards and forwards what the process is. And sometimes when you do that, you see shortcomings or you see holes in it. And then your audience or the demoees, one of the purposes of doing demos is to help them change their perspective on the world or maybe your project in particular. So if you go into a room of people, and sometimes you'll do this in organizations where you're on a team and you have to convince other teams that your project is really kind of viable and worth something. You want to maybe change their perspective on it. You want to show them the value that your project has. Or maybe you're working with virtual reality and you have a bunch of people you're demoing this to who have no experience with virtual reality. And this is often the case when you work with virtual reality. You give a demo, and if you give a really effective demo and it works well for them, it changes their perspective on that technology, but also the world. They get to see, these simulations, these great simulations, they get to immerse in them. And they didn't know that was possible before. So there are a lot of ways demos are useful. And so this whole idea of demo or die, it kind of comes out of MIT. So Jesse was talking about an event at MIT, and so it has a very rich history there. It was started by Nicholas Negroponte, who was, I guess he's still at MIT Media Lab. He was based, and this is, an academic setting, but it's a very innovative academic setting. So he eschewed the traditional publisher perish model where you write a paper and you send it off, and then, you get reviewed, and it takes like almost a year sometimes to get published. Your paper being the sort of demo, but it's also a very static demo that is very formal. And so he didn't like that. So what he wanted to do is emphasize producing artifacts and associated demos. And in fact, a demo became the atomic unit of any research group in the media lab. Now, demos can often be good, they can be educational, they can be useful to the demoer, but they can also end up being proof of concept vaporware. So a lot of times labs will produce a demo, and the demo does just a quick demonstration of something. It works, and you make sure it works. You refine it to make sure it works. But it doesn't really have any content. And what I mean is it doesn't do anything. So you just kind of do this superficial demo, and you show how something works. And then down the road, you try to make your software sort of scale it up in terms of its functionality. And as it turns out, sometimes that gap between the proof of concept and the actual, maybe like a production release of software never really materializes. And so a lot of times demos are like that. They're very superficial. It's like the idea of the Potemkin village where they would just put up images of houses instead of having houses there. So we need maybe more comprehensive forms of demo or die. There's a different type of approach called deploy or die. So this is where you kind of take the demo idea and you turn it into like your goal is to deploy something, not just to demo it. So if you can deploy something and then let other people use it, then that's the standard instead of demos. In any case, there are ways that you can do this. It's a basic formula of education, of testing, of understanding. So I have some other things in these slides. Demo or die is tied to agile in the sense of looking at retrospectives and sprint reviews. So this is like working with teams and reporting out the activity of teams, either during sprints or after sprints. And so you can imagine if you have done a sprint where you work through a bunch of issues and you come out the other end, you want to demo what you've done just to show that it's work, that you were successful. The other thing I have in here is that demoing is part of a cultural milieu within like agile, and there's this it's part of a management process in agile. So you do a lot of demos, that sometimes are maybe not so useful to your team, but you do it because it's this cultural practice that you engage in. And, people just kind of do it because they feel like they have to do it. And sometimes they don't do it very well. So sometimes when you're working in a software team, you might overuse demos as part of Agile, as, saying, demo something for me every week. Well, you don't have a demo every week. So the demos are kind of incomplete, and all you see is like people just kind of showing what they did step by step, and there's no understanding necessarily what they've done, and then that's not really valuable to people. So there's this crisis in software development where people just kind of go through the motions at Agile, and it's important to remember that demo or die comes from that context, not just from MIT, but Agile, which also came out of MIT, in that mindset. So it's important to think about that when you implement a demo system. And so, sometimes we want to avoid demos from remaining demos or dying off. So, like I said, sometimes people will create a really nice demo, but the only thing it does is you can just demo something endlessly. And so sometimes you want to have a finished version of your software, or you want to move on from the demo. And sometimes the demo is so well crafted that it serves as a good demo, but it doesn't do anything else. It's like, it's kind of a marketing tool. And so, we iterate through demos and we perfect them. Sometimes we want to break out and do a finished version, though. And that's where we can have problems. And so this is an example of Steve Jobs doing the one more thing demos. If you go back on YouTube, you can see early versions of the Apple keynotes and they still do this, but like Steve Jobs did a really good job, because he would say one more thing, and then at the end, and he'd introduce this like groundbreaking concept. And the way that they would do it is by demoing the thing on stage, so it has to work. And then so he introduced different things on stage, like the iPhone. You'd pull it out, you'd do some things with it, you could see what it did, you could understand the significance of it, and then that was something that would come out soon. And so it's hard to do because you have to sort of make sure everything works. But also, if everything works, people get this thing in their head that's greater than if you just said, one more thing, we're releasing a cell phone, and you describe it to people at the end of the keynote, and then people are like, oh, well, that's interesting. But it doesn't capture their imagination like the demo. Okay, so that's all I had on that. I don't know if anyone had anything to say about that or follow-up comments.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think that's a wonderful complement to things that I was getting at, which is indeed much more of a specific, targeted take on it. And I think it's personally fascinating to look at the culture of how organizations promote the demos, because when you get into different arenas, they'll have very different takes on even project management, which I think is something we'll cover a lot ahead. But you'll find groups that are micromanaging your progress reports, and you'll find CTOs that say, yeah, I think project management's kind of a waste of time altogether. And there'll be times when they're right and times when they're wrong. So as you get this, I think I'm motivated to sort of make, maybe I used the phrase beyond demo or die before, but maybe more like, this is more of a comment to Bradley, I think, right? I think doing something specifically about this, like what is the point of the demo or die ecosystem at large? Like, how do you introduce people to it? Because we kind of talk about it, and people do, like in this lab, for example, everybody here in this lab who does demo or die, in the context of this lab, will be approaching it in a very, one instance of it that will make sense for this lab and for our projects and for the course. And that's really important to know what that instance or that sort of variety or that phenotype, if you will, of experiences is going to be like. But when you're in different situations, what is it going to be like? And how do you kind of understand the whole possibility space of the demo or die process? I think the graphics are really good of demo or die. A little bit like kill your darlings kind of idea, or just a different take on the iterational process. And like when you're in different organizational settings, what it means to have an effective demo will change a lot. So just kind of almost like getting fluent in the language and the performance art, if you will, of demo or die is one thing. Other comments that I wanted to quickly make were, I just lost it. Yes. I just lost this really nice idea I wanted to say. But sometimes that happens too. I did want to say yes to improvisation. That's something I talked about in my post a little bit, is sort of learning, like John Warner at the MIT thing. He would kind of create these like low-level hurdles for people to trip over or gracefully rise above. And that was a little like benevolent antagonism there, but regardless of him doing it or not, it was sort of this implicit teaching of you're going to get random questions sometimes, and how do you redirect them? How do you focus on what you want to focus on? How do you sort of take a situation to focus on the value that you have, or what the meaning that you have, and understand that you're in an environment where a lot of questions might come at you. And my final point for this is like, which is what I kind of remember what I was going to say a few moments ago, a little bit out of context now. But when you are, it's so important to understand. I think it's what I wrote in the chat a little bit, about expert writing. Like the goal of your demo and the goal of your what you're trying to do with your audience at different stages. It's really important to understand too, because a lot of, and this is sort of expert writing, I forget his name, but he's the Chicago guy that we mentioned a few times in the past. And just understanding when you're doing a lot of in-house demo stuff, it's a great place to explore and try. And everybody here, like that's the thing, everybody in this group, when you're demoing to us, we automatically care about what you're saying. But the more public you get and the more in the world you get, the more you're going to have to center the mind changing. You're going to have to tell them why it matters. You're going to have to show them, and why Bradley concluded with and one more thing, because it's a powerful thing to have functioning finished presentation, and then to make it super clear, like why the impact is so strong is because it's not just here's an idea that will change your mind about how you think about something. It's here's a technology, here's a device, here's a thing that will change how you think or manage a problem space. Like it's saying you can use this to have an alternative at the level of, here's something that provides you with an actual functioning alternative to how you can approach something. And that's a different kind of impact for sure than your preparatory in-house early demo or dies, where like, we know the problem space, we know where you want to go, and we're going to give you feedback along those lines. And it's just good to get used to the whole process. So I could talk about this forever. I really like the presentation. I'm sure I'll reference a lot. I'll probably write some things about it, and I have some, general projects and things to pitch for us to do that head. But great stuff, and I look forward to more talk about it.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. Yeah. So, that's all for today. I don't know if Morgan had anything. He's getting set up in his space there.
Sorry, I'm getting a bunch of Raspberry Pis ready for some projects. We do a not monthly, but maybe every quarter. I found it a horrible name, but Kill Your Baby, which is I think what what you meant by kill your darlings. You know, like present a project and allow people to try to give you good critical feedback. But yeah, I like that a lot in terms of emphasizing. I mean, you know, like again, in appropriate usage, it's a good model for a lot of things, and you know.
I think that's like the key. This is a real inside baseball, deep into weird things. I'm going to try to say very 1, 2, 3 sentences most about it. Guiding people as a leader of a project or a group, guiding people through the developmental processes of the quality of their demos and preparing them to receive the critiques, and then helping them figure out what the merits are and their options in terms of improving, letting it dial together, or repurposing it. That's like where a lot of things, from an administrative lead level, well, that's where a lot of things happen or don't happen. And I just feel like there's so much there and so little like actual fluency about what those processes are. So at the level of our audience today, just starting to think about, you know, a lot of what we're saying maybe is like a little more involved, but the more you can gain fluency of the decisions that are making from this point and how an administrator or supervisor is trying to determine what is successful or not, or frankly, getting the confidence to realize, geez, my supervisor's really doing a bad job of setting me up, because sometimes you're going to find a supervisor that's going to put you in a position, hey, Jess, like they'll pull you into a room with no context and say, hey, you got this solution, right? And they'll use you almost as a fall guy or something like that, or not even that. They'll just do this thing, and it's like the confidence to understand sometimes when that happens, it's just not good management. It's not your fault. So like you see the opportunities and the good uses and the bad uses, and sometimes, you know, not everybody handles it well. So what does good practice look like? I think that's so important to understand. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Thank you for attending, and see you next week. Look forward to seeing the first week of coding period.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. See you.
I think